Harry Potter might be over, but Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald brought us back to researching Harry Potter theories we might have missed. Stay tuned to hear about an awesome theory about Nagini that has nothing to do with the zoo from the first book. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to The Things. Now let's check out 10 Harry Potter fan theories that changed everything. Trelawney's prediction. Let's start off with the character no one really liked, but she turned out to make quite a few predictions that ended up coming true. Let's face it, we all thought Trelawney was just a con artist until we learned that J.K. Rowling never coincidentally writes something and everything connects. This one is a simple theory, but it should really change your opinion on the divination professor. Do you remember the very first divination class, where Professor Trelawney tries to guess Harry's birth month and gets it wrong, which makes people around chuckle? Well, one Quora writer pointed out that she actually kind of was right now that we know that Harry is a Horcrux. She's saying that Harry was born in midwinter, but we all know that he was born in July. Well, what if she was actually guessing the age of his Horcrux? Or even Voldemort's birthday? We also know that Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort, was born on December 31st, which is still considered midwinter. Trelawney did actually foreshadow Harry being a Horcrux, except no one ever realized it. Knowing that, we have a feeling there are plenty of more hints thrown our way as we reread the book. Speaking of, we bet you never saw this hint coming: the Dursleys. Trelawney's theory kind of connects to this one. So, we all know that Harry is a Horcrux, and because of the last book, we also know that whoever's around a Horcrux becomes miserable and can even start picking fights. A Tumblr user called Graphic Nerdity pointed out an interesting theory that will make you look at the Dursleys in a completely different light. We all know the Dursleys were completely mean and abusive to Harry without any reason whatsoever other than they really hated the Magicful. But what if their behavior relates to the fact that they were living with a Horcrux all this time? Of course, some people might say that this theory might just want to make excuses for Dursley's behavior and blame Harry. But could it be that their mood was also magnified by the fact that Harry was a Horcrux? The theory was never confirmed by J.K. Rowling, and although it might be accidental, it does put things in a weird perspective and definitely changes everything. Well, everything except for the fact that the Dursleys were just unapologetically mean to Harry for all those years. What do you think of this one? Let us know in the comments. Foreshadowing. This fan theory from a Quora user states that the very first book had a lot of foreshadowing in what's going to happen in the end, and the main link is Firenze the Centaur, who rescued Harry from the very first Voldemort sighting. The Centaurs are mad at Firenze for interfering and say that it's written in the stars, a statement that is also later confirmed by Harry. We also know that in the very final book, when the battle between Harry and Voldemort happened yet again, the Centaurs did nothing to help and finally allowed the stars to do what it was said in the prophecy. They only joined the battle once the news that Harry had lost his life was being spread. The fan theory states that the sentence, "It was written in the stars," foreshadows what was meant to happen between Harry and Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest all along. And we all know that Firenze was banished from the herd for interfering, as well as helping Dumbledore too. Plus, it makes sense why Centaurs took a step back until the prophecy was fulfilled. Another foreshadowing from the first movie occurs when Hagrid talks about you-know-who and his whereabouts. He states that he doesn't believe he's actually gone, because he doesn't think he had enough human left in him. Creevey's parents. Now this is an interesting one. A Reddit user pointed out a possible reason why Colin Creevey's parents are both Muggles. We all know that both Colin and his brother are wizards, which is kind of strange considering they were both Muggles. There's no way two Muggles would be able to give birth to two wizards, right? Well, Luna Lilliputian's theory states that their parents weren't actually Muggles. They were squibs, actually given up by pure-blood families. The user goes on to say that their families put them up for adoption and wiped their children's memories because they were so disappointed in them for not being able to produce magic. So they grew up in a normal Muggle environment, and they never remembered their magic past at all. We also know that Colin's dad loves looking at pictures of Hogwarts, which could mean he's actually trying to touch on a memory that's been erased. It could just be that when the Creevey parents met, they were able to awake part of the memory that was suppressed, which is probably why they have such strong interest in magic, even though they can't really practice it themselves. The Tale of the Three Brothers. This is a viral theory that's actually pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Deathly Hallows was full of unexpected stories and turns, including the Tale of the Three Brothers, which actually played a more important part than we think. The theory states that Snape, Harry, and Voldemort are those three brothers. Voldemort represents the oldest brother as he's the one that seeks the most power, only to ultimately turn on him. Snape is the middle brother, who can never stop thinking about his past love. His memory ends up being the result of the end of his life, which is sort of what happens to Snape. And then there's Harry, the youngest brother, who was sought by the end, but it couldn't get him until he went toward it willingly. That's kind of what happens in the last book, when Harry and Dumbledore take a walk on what looks like the platform 9 3/4. So, could Dumbledore represent death? It looks like J.K. Rowling is totally cheering on this idea and says it really fits the entire story. You'll definitely never look at Dumbledore again after this theory, even if you already know how the story ended. St. Mungo's. One of our favorite theories also involves a lot of foreshadowing. It's one of those that will make you say, I don't know. But at the same time, this could actually be pretty interesting. A Quora user pointed out this crazy foreshadowing idea from the 5th book when Harry visits Mr. Weasley in St. Mungo's. The theory is actually pretty simple, but it could actually foresee something no one ever wanted to happen. St. Mungo's has wards such as creature-induced injuries, dangerous, Die Llewellyn ward, and serious bites. But if you put the first words of each of those things together, you actually get a statement that reads, creature, dangerous, die, serious. If you say it 3 times fast, you can probably figure out that warns Harry that creature is dangerous, because he'll be the reason why Harry's godfather lost his life. What an interesting warning. Considering both of these things happen in the 5th book, we have a feeling there might be way more to this theory than we think. But unless you've actually written out those words, you'd never know. Although we did have a feeling that's exactly what J.K. Rowling did before she wrote down that entire hospital scene. This theory hasn't been confirmed either, but it's our favorite because of its detail. 10 points to Neville. This one actually makes a lot of sense as it brings several theories together, even though it was never confirmed. A Quora user pointed out the reason why Dumbledore gave Neville 10 points during the 1st book when he stood up to his friends. We were all holding our breaths to see if Gryffindor would win the House Cup, and it all came down to just a few points after our favorite trio got theirs. And that's when Dumbledore acknowledged Neville and gave him 10 points. But we all thought he was doing this to include Neville and make him feel part of the team. This Quora user points out that Dumbledore knows the value of standing up to his friends, because that's exactly what he had to do with Grindelwald. Speaking of Grindelwald, our last theory is incredibly interesting too. But going back to the 10 points, another Quora user also pointed out that Dumbledore also knows the cost of not standing up to your friends, because we all know that he also lost his sister in the process. So the 10 points moment is actually a lot more meaningful than you thought. Well, at least according to this fan theory, that seems to connect everything together. Divination Predictions. Hermione might have been wrong about Trelawney and divination in general, because it turns out a lot of predictions did actually come true. After all, J.K. Rowling never writes anything that's not meaningful. So knowing this, a Tumblr user revisited the divination class, where Harry and Ron mess around with their predictions in the Goblet of Fire. Everyone just brushed them off because, quite honestly, they didn't look like much. But in fact, all of those predictions actually came through if you think about it. They make up a lot of stuff, like Harry will be in danger of burns, he'll lose a treasured possession, he'll drown, he'll get stabbed in the back by someone he thought was a friend, and he'll come off worse in a fight. Well, didn't all those things actually happen? He fought a dragon, he lost Ron as his best friend, he was submerged in the Black Lake, his defense against the dark arts professor stabbed him in the back, and he came off worse in a fight after his duel with Voldemort at the graveyard. Sure, they're a little far-fetched, but hey, you can't ignore this theory. Maybe they all have psychic powers within them, and Trelawney was right all along. Sorry, Hermione. Crookshanks. There are so many favorite theories within Harry Potter, it's extremely hard to choose our favorite one, but this is definitely one of the best ones. No one ever explained the story of Crookshanks, but fans have plenty of theories. This Quora user states that Crookshanks has actually been around longer than we think. Hermione's cat might have connections to the cat that was owned by the Potters, since Harry's mother mentions they had a cat in her letter. Harry wonders if the cat survived the attack, but of course the question is never answered. In the 3rd book, we also find out that the owner of the pet store had Crookshanks for quite some time because no one wanted it. Crookshanks also recognizes Scabbers, aka Peter and Sirius. So could it be that Crookshanks was actually the same cat that was owned by Lily and James Potter? It explains why it would recognize Scabbers and Sirius, especially since they frequently visited and probably transformed quite a lot. This theory was never confirmed, but it would be so nice to know that a part of the Potter family has always been around Harry all this time. Nagini. This Harry Potter fan theory also relates to the Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald movie that's set to come out in November 2018. It might explain the origin of Nagini the snake, and we all know there are many unanswered questions about that snake. We know that Nagini's a Horcrux, but many suspect that the story behind Nagini is just slightly different. All fingers seem to point to Maledictus, a human witch whose blood was cursed, leading her to turn into an actual beast. When the first Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald was released, we caught a glimpse of Maledictus, and theories that she could be the original version of Nagini quickly started to spread. No one seemed to have confirmed this, but it would make sense that a human witch became a beast, and then, for some reason, Voldemort made her a Horcrux. So was Nagini actually human with literal bad blood that turned her into a beast? Sounds like an awesome theory. Previous theories of Nagini being the snake from the zoo we saw in the first movie has also been a subject of discussion. None of these have been confirmed, but they're absolutely mind-blowing to think about. And that's all for our video. Don't forget to subscribe to The Things and tell us how you felt about this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.